Hey, it's Drybear. Dune Awakening, the upcoming MMO, was set to release on May 20th in just about a month from now. However, it's been delayed a few weeks to June 10th, and they did a live stream going over the new combat updates, some new gameplay. So let's dive into what has been going on for Dune Awakening. Now, if you haven't heard about Dune Awakening, it is an upcoming survival crafting MMO that's based in the Dune universe and is going to be focused on social interactions, combat, PvP, base building, things like that. And it's been causing quite a stir for the last year or so as Funcom has been working on it, but it's also been kind of an interesting and somewhat quiet development. They've only done closed alpha and closed beta. They haven't done any open testing, even though they had planned to launch in just about a month from now. They still hadn't done any stress testing, public testing, or any of that. So a lot of people were wondering what was it going to be like on launch. So with the delay going from May 20 to June 10th, they also announced that they will be doing a beta weekend around the time that they were originally going to launch. So at some point in May, over the next month or so, or 5 weeks, they will be doing a open test. And if you're at all interested in the game, I think it's a great time to jump in and try. There will be the launch on June 10th, and they're also doing, if you pay a little bit extra, you'll get 5-day early access for June 5th, which we can talk about the server structure and how early access will work on the game overall. The core game has 5 base classes or archetypes, and they focus on general combat. There is a trooper that focuses on, actually, no, let's just put it on screen. These are the 5 classes: Swordmaster, Bene Gesserit, Mentat, Trooper, and Planetologist, which is the newest one to be added. So you can either focus on recon and strategy, physical mastery and manipulation, so like more psyker powers. Swordmaster is all about close quarters, parrying and deflecting, and doing mostly melee. Trooper is your career soldier, focused on weapons, weapon usage, primarily ranged weapon usage. And Planetologist is a new one, which they're describing as like a scientist / explorer, which will probably more focus on the survival aspect of the game and the exploration aspect. And they've put a lot of focus on the social systems. There's going to be guild versus guild interactions. There's going to be lots of fights over spice, which you get in the universe of Dune, especially on the planet Arakis, where spice originates. And there will also be like some, you can sniff or inhale the spice to get superpowers and bonuses and things like that, which is going to focus on generating these resources. They've mentioned that the resource of spice is going to focus on political impact between, rivaling factions and leaders. There's going to be economic impact on what's available and all of that in between. On top of that, there will be dungeons to loot, encounters to go through in PvE, and there will also be designated PvP areas and deep dungeons, which will be in the PvP areas where you'll fight over loot. They even talked about how there will be like ninja looted, essentially. They said that some of the PvP dungeons have no restrictions on loot at all, so one person can go to the end of the dungeon, find the chest, loot everything, and then run away, except it's an open PvP area, so you can just take them out, and you're kind of trusting your teammates or guildmates and things like that. So it sounds like there's going to be a lot of general chaos when it comes to the social aspect of finding loot and all of that. There is also a blueprint system for building and sharing buildings with people. It's going to be very base building focused, where you can have multi-tiered structures, refineries, places where you can construct resources and put things together. You can also lock it so other people can't get in, or share it with your guildmates or party mates and everything in between. So a big aspect on that. And what ties the combat to the base building and the world building aspect is going to be the survival part. Yes, it is combat focused. Yes, there are PvE aspects and PvP aspects, but it is also a survival MMO as well. So you will encounter things like dehydration, you'll have to deal with the elements, there will be desert storms that overtake you and mess with your ability to traverse the environment. There will be random weekly changes to the environment as well that will cause you to have to deal with those in real time while you're trying to do other activities. You will also suffer from heat stroke because it is a desert, and everything in between. So they've got a wide gamut of things that you can dive into and play around with, and hopefully the base building, the social constructs of guilds and guild versus guild vying for resources all comes together. My only concern with that is generally we've seen a lot of games focus on the social aspect, the social systems. PAX Day was almost entirely socially focused, doing guilds. We saw that, early New World, before they did the solo campaign update, especially for consoles, focused a lot on battlegrounds and resource guarding with other teams. We see a lot of that with like Throne and Liberty, focused on open world combat combat, guild versus guild, and resources. And I feel like a lot of times these socially focused games end up becoming harder and harder to maintain a player base as they grow smaller. So on launch, they're super awesome, but when you get down to lower CCU numbers over time, it tends to be harder and harder to make those social interactions more interesting. Now, it doesn't mean that that's the only system you have in here. They do have pure solo gameplay. So if you wanted to just explore the areas, dive into dungeons, there are solo versions of the dungeons, there are group versions of the dungeons, and there's PvP versions of the dungeons as well. And hopefully with enough depth in the class system and how you mix together the abilities and the resources and generating, you overall have a really unique experience that is launching June 10th or June 5th if you have early access, with the head start for the pre-order and all of that coming together. And the game being on Unreal 5 looks great. It's very pretty to look at. I mean, I think it's kind of hard to make a game in UE5 that doesn't have a natural shine to it just because the way the engine is designed. But in general, I think there's a lot of excitement going towards playing Dune Awakening, and I hope that this showcase that they showed yesterday gets people even more excited. Now, a lot of this came with the trailers that we've seen so far, is what you're seeing on screen. We've seen a lot of vehicle combat and some of the cinematic stuff, but what they went through yesterday is they actually showed a full dungeon minus the final boss, both in solo mode and in full PvP mode, where they also did like a duel at the end for the final loot and everything on that as well. So I think that there does seem to be enough substance here to feel really good, and hopefully people that are just waiting for the game are going to be excited about what they've shown. Now, the skill trees don't seem too extensive, and you can only have 3 techniques equipped and 3 abilities equipped. You unlock the 3rd ability slot, they said, throughout the story, and they also have the ability to add in spice powers, which means that if you are someone who is like using the spice, you can activate the spice, or if you inhale it in a spice field, you'll end up getting new powers. You can get like shorter cooldowns, you can be immune to poison, you can get unique passives that are only available when you're high on spice, is what I'm calling it now, or greatly increased damage. It's basically like a superhuman state because you've inhaled some spice and supercharged yourself, that goes along with your core abilities and techniques. The way they describe the combat in general is that you'll have the choice between melee and ranged, and also have abilities mixed in. And there's also a much smaller form to the combat as well, which they showcased in their dungeon showcase here. You can see that I believe this character, they didn't explicitly say it, I don't think, but I believe this is a Bene Gesserit, which is the like mind controller, like the main characters in Dune that can control people's minds. They have psycho abilities where they can mind control people, they can paralyze people and things like that, or they can command NPCs to do certain things. And then they also have physical manifestations, so they can sprint super fast for a second or two, or they can do kind of like superhuman feats, which is different than like a sword master, which might be more focused on close quarters combat. The Bene is going to be a little bit more focused on like controlling crazy powers while also using their gear and equipment. And a lot of what we've seen is that the combat is very small form. What I mean by that is it's like, 1v1, 1v2, 2v2, and a lot of the dungeons are built that way as well, and the parties are maximum of 4 players, while the guilds are going to be much larger. It's going to be focused kind of on this system here. They have a core gameplay functionality of your HP, which is the red bar, and then you have a shield on top of it. And then you have stamina for all your actions. You can dash, which is a hot action, which allows you to avoid damage or break out of shield breaks and things like that. And then you can switch between using melee abilities or your ranged weapons, which are all mostly guns or kind of like dart guns and things like that, all mixed together. And it seems like depending on your class, you're going to be able to build into one of these play styles or have a hybrid approach that allows you to play all of them to a lesser degree, which is pretty cool. They also showed off this cool feature, which is kind of like a solo leveling red gate. Basically, there are some instant style combat in these dungeons here. I believe these exist in the PvP ones as well, and it's a gate that once you go in, you can't exit until all the enemies are dead, which hopefully kind of counteracts some of the ninja loot system that they've developed. Again, I'm super kind of bullish on this idea of having open free loot in all dungeons so that someone can come and just take everything and leave, and forcing you to fight them, which is kind of wild. You even see some of like the Sandevistan dashing combat there as well. And even in the melee, there's still like parrying, blocking, or you can get into shield breaks as well. Anytime you see that glowing blue aura, it means that their shield is active, which is protecting their HP bar. However, there is a shield penetration both from melee weapons as well as ranged weapons as well. There are some guns that actually will drill through shields and deal damage if they aren't dealt with. So anytime you see that pulsing red glow, it means that they're attempting to penetrate the shield, which takes a second or so, and then if it succeeds, it will deal damage directly to the HP bar regardless of the shield that is there. And again, there are like drill bit or drill style ranged weapons that do that as well, though it seems like you can dash anytime this animation gets triggered, and does seem to be a part of like the rock paper scissors style combat that's there. One question I have, which I haven't really seen any of this, is when we get into the pure spice wars, so like out in the desert during exploration, you can actually there are like wars that go over the spice, as there are in the movies and in the books. So when spice becomes available or appears, everyone's going to go fighting over it. You know, they're going to load up, get all their equipment and vehicles. 32-man guilds are going to start flying out trying to get the spice. There's going to be power-up areas where you get supercharged by the spice and you're high on spice, and people are fighting over it. And so while it seems like the combat is really meant for 1 to 4 players, I'm very curious how these guild versus guild open PvP areas will feel with a real like open like test, not like a closed beta or something like that, but actually with a large number of players. How is that going to feel overall, and how is that going to function? But overall, I think the game looks cool. It looks crisp. It seems like they've got a cool system going for how the exploration fits into the base building and the social aspects, and if there's enough there for you to want to dive into these dungeons, collect loot, and escape with your life, while also dealing with the enemies and players that might be involved in that process, I think creates a kind of cool environment for an MMO in general. Then they showed a group dungeon where they have a full group of 4 players going through the dungeon, and everyone's kind of doing their special thing. It doesn't seem like there's any requirements for class builds or roles as far as going through these dungeons in general, and they even showed some PvP at the end where people were fighting and kind of fighting over the final loot and everything, which does seem like you have a wide range of people that could fit into this. You might get the Minecraft, Power World, Rust style players, or 7 Days to Die style players that just want to get in, build a base, get super, excited about the blueprinting system and sharing blueprints with other teams. You might have the people that only want to play solo and do the PvE aspect of the game. You might have people that only want to do PvP and guild versus guild, and you might have groups that want to do these 4-man dungeons and get as much loot as they can while having their own kind of loot in their base back and forth, which I think is, if they're able to succeed in that, should see a very strong base for different kinds of play styles finding a home. The PvP does seem like it could get, it does seem like it's designed for small scale. And so when you see these like 1v1s or free-for-alls, I feel like this, player versus player seems kind of interesting. Stamina management matters, because if you run out of stamina, you can very easily have your shield penetrated and not recovered there. You can see that when you activate your spice powers and you get high on spice, those extra effects can matter, and also your specific character could matter. On top of that, it is a survival game, which means if you run out of resources, like you lose durability on your gear, or you don't have enough water to stay hydrated, or you run out of food, all of that kind of plays into the world building of a survival MMO in general. And hopefully this feels really good for small scale. But again, my major concern is once we actually get this beta weekend next month, I really want to try out the guild versus guild, like large scale spice wars, just to see how it feels, because I feel like this kind of combat is great for small scale, room style PvP, but I'm very curious to see how 32v32 guild battles for spice wars is going to feel, not in the closed beta state, but actually in a launched form with randoms that just got the game, what that is going to look like in the end, especially when you start putting vehicles on, you have multiple vehicles, like it's going to feel, I feel like, more planet side in a lot of ways, rather than just kind of this style combat that we're seeing on screen. Next, they talked about servers and setup, because anytime you do head start for an MMO like this, like a progression-based game, there's a big question of like, if people get 5 days head start on something and I start late, what does that mean? So the way they described it, which honestly sounds a little bit convoluted for the setup here, usually in these kind of survival-based games with base building, having everyone in one spot all at the same time is kind of weird. We've seen a lot of different games take different approaches to this, whether they're seasonal versus not. But what you're seeing seeing on screen is the setup that they want to have for the game and what they're planning for it. So there will be social hubs, which are going to be all one server, and you can walk around and it'll be instance between players that way. Then there's going to be the deep desert, which is going to be the PvP zone that has like really great loot, changing, weekly changing environments and things like that. And then they're going to have some of the smaller form content, which you can see that stack of worlds in the Haga Basin. So while the PvP open world area is deep deserts, hundreds of players, they're going to have, upwards of 40 players in these stacks, these instance world stacks. And basically, depending on when you start the game and what server you're on, you'll be on one of these places. And you can, the way they described it, you can actually visit other people's worlds, connect with them, and you can do quests with them and, link up with them. You can go to their base, they can go to your base. But based on how this structure is set up, it's kind of odd the way they described it. And I hope it ends up feeling really good at the end. But like having all these separate instances in a game that's meant to be survival based, I guess it's not the end of the world. Some games run it like this. And I feel like it's kind of bridging the gap between games like Once Human, which is probably more similar to the setup they have here, versus like more of these world-based games like Minecraft or Pal Worlds, right? Where you just have a server that you start building on, or Terraria or something, where you can actually start building on the server, connect with your teammates that way and build it. But this is meant to be a lot more, upscaled, like larger groups of people, a lot more people playing online, a little more of the MMO, the massive MMO style on that. I have some concerns about this, but it could end up being really cool depending on how easy it is to navigate between the different worlds and servers and link up with your friends, especially those that are playing on console versus PC. But that's the news. We're going from May 20th to June 10th for the full release of Dune Awakening. The early access jumpstart starts on June 5th, 5 days earlier, and they did promise a beta weekend at some point in May, probably around May 20th, but we'll just have to wait and see once we have the final details there. But let me know what your temperature check, your vibe check is on Dune Awakening. Have you heard of the game? Are you excited about the release of it? And what do you think about the recent showcase of actual combat, showing some of the gameplay here and some of the systems that we've described in this video? If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people. And don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.